guest into the Daily Connerton Memorial Company interview chair will never stop defending our freedoms, defending our American system of government, defending our liberties. He and I served together in our House of Representatives until he moved on to become a senator, replacing Joe Markley, another good friend of the show. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? He went on an incredible rant on the floor of the Senate, which I'm just going to bring him on so that he can articulate this a lot better than I can. A good friend of our show as well. Let's welcome State Senator Rob Sampson. Rob, good morning.
Good morning, Representative. Thank you for that delightful introduction. I appreciate it very much.
No, Rob, Senator, It was such a privilege to serve with somebody as articulate and someone who's so constitutional, protecting our liberties as much as you. I don't think people quite understand. I'm gonna try to explain this the best way that I can. And I know that you are much too humble an individual for you to ever articulate this about yourself. But you care about our freedoms. You care about our way of life. You care about our liberties. You're not there to make friends. You're not there to watch what you say because you may get in trouble or your bill may not get called or this or that. You're there for a reason. And I don't think anybody truly appreciates you sticking your neck out as much as you do until they take a look at the bigger picture. Not just through their political eyes, but their eyes as a human being and paying attention to what's going on around them till they really appreciate all the work that you're doing on behalf of our state, our businesses, our organizations, our families, and our individuals. Senator, it was a privilege to serve with you in our House of Representatives, and I wish you nothing but continued success as you already are having for your constituents and for the state, for that matter, in our state Senate.
Well, Gary, let me just say that the feeling is completely mutual, and the effort that you put in each day on the air to educate and inform the citizens of the state of Connecticut about their freedoms and the importance of understanding our system of government is priceless. And without people like you on the air, we would lose it all in a heartbeat. What you just said about the media is completely true. The media, their job really is supposed to be to question authority.
That's right.
And to make sure that the facts are understood so that people are informed well enough so that they can make appropriate decisions about whether their government is acting appropriately and what they need to do at election time. And I'm afraid that the news media, largely in this state, is completely in the tank for the administration. Yeah. And that's extremely unfortunate. I think the reason is that they want access. They're fearful that if they do not toe the governor and the majority Democrats line, they're going to lose access. They're not going to know about the next news story that comes out of the administration. And that's unfortunate because they need to be doing the job of being the voice of the people.
Senator, you bring up an outstanding point. And this, let me do a really quick digression, and then I really want to turn things over to your venting on the Senate floor about a week or so ago. When I remember being in college, I got my degree in my degrees in communications with a concentration on broadcast journalism, and I remember a particular course. It was the history of journalism, and nobody wanted to take that, but it's part of the curriculum to get your degree. And I love history, so I didn't mind it myself. And it goes back to the William Randolph Hearsts and even before that. I mean, that's just in the early 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s. But of course, journalism predates that by generations, by centuries. So the interesting thing is your point is spot on. The purpose of journalists was to question government, that you shouldn't be believing your government. And it's really up to the reporters, the journalists, if you will, to take them to task. And it's like a point counterpoint and to really hold their feet to the fire. And it's just very sad on how far journalism, and now we introduce new medium into that fold, how far away from that it's become, where you're right. These newspapers and these TV media outlets, whether it's 24-hour news or your local news, they're owned. They're owned by conglomerates that have political agendas that are far left. So, of course, it's like selling a car with a dent on one side. Well, you're not going to take a photograph of that side of the car. You're going to take a photograph of the car that's all shiny with no dents, But the dent is still there nonetheless. And it's very sad to have former colleagues of mine or people I went to college with tell me off the record, yeah, Gary, you're spot on. That's exactly how it is. I'm getting edited. They're only allowing 1 point. And if I'm going to do the counterpoint or the Republican side, they only get 1/3 the amount of time that the Democrat has. It's disheartening, and it's so un-American. But I'm sorry. My purpose with you is not to go into media. I can do that on my own. But it's just so disgusting.
Well, it's a good topic anyway, and it's directly related to, the conversation about our state government and the direction that we're headed. Yeah. It's why the administration in the state of Connecticut has continued to be able to abuse their power. If the news media was challenging the governor on the truth about whether we are in an emergency state, he'd never be able to continue his emergency powers and the mandates that result. But the fact is that they just put out whatever the administration says day to day. And as a result, the people remain fearful. They don't understand what the facts on the ground really are. And that's what I spoke about a week ago on the floor of the state Senate. I tried to make sure people understood the entire truth, the complete set of facts about what's going on. The pandemic is not over. COVID is still with us. It's probably going to be with us forever. The scientists and folks that I've been reading tell us that it's going to continue into the future. It's going to continue to evolve, and it'll be something we have to deal with as human beings, possibly eternally. The thing is, it's not that bad. It's bad. There's no question about it, and we've got to remain cautious. But in Connecticut, you have 200 people hospitalized in the entire state, 3.6 million people in this state. That is just over 3% of all of the hospital beds that we have. So we're not overwhelming our hospitals. There's no craziness going on. The newspaper is not filled with obituaries. Yes, people are dying occasionally, and that's sad and tragic. But it is not the point of an emergency where the state has to shut down and relinquish legislative authority to the governor. And all of the mandates that we're facing and seeing that are abusive, to say the least, can go away as soon as the people realize that that emergency is over and that the legislature should reclaim their proper role.
To that point, then, Senator, we know that the governor's approval ratings pre-pandemic was hovering in the low to mid 20 percentile. It's almost like he didn't know what he was in for and had some buyer's remorse, that he regretted running. He couldn't get his toll bill passed, no matter how many different times the bill was rewritten, trucks, cars, HOV lane, anything. He couldn't get that passed. He didn't like dealing with his Democrat leaders, Martin Looney in the Senate and Matt Ritter in the House. And then, lo and behold, a year goes by and this coronavirus starts and he obtains all executive powers that still go on to today. And then what happens, well, at least in the early stages of it, is that his approval ratings go from mid-20s to mid-60s, peaking at 66%. Now, it's not there now. It's somewhere in the low 50 percentile. So it's gone down, over 10 points, maybe even 15 points, but it's still enough to win. Now, that begs the question, why keep us in this state of emergency when, to your point, and not only do I agree with you, but a lot of people agree with you that we're really overreacting to this now. Not that I don't want to disregard it. I don't want to discount it. You're absolutely right. It's something to be concerned about, but not to the extent of shutting down the economy and putting the fear. And people are living in fear right now, wearing a mask nearly 20 out of 24 hours a day. Should we be there? What's to his advantage then to continue in these emergency powers?
Well, I don't think it is to his advantage. And I'm counting on that, as a matter of fact, Gary. It's just a matter of the Democrats. They don't know when to quit. They're going to continue to reach and overreach as much as they can, as long as they see opportunity. But I think the pendulum is already swinging back. I think people are realizing now that this has gone too far, that the worst of the pandemic is over, that the state is not in a state of emergency over it, although we're, as you said, keeping an eye on things and making sure we still follow our protocols and precautions. And I think that's growing every day. I think the sentiment is growing that this needs to end. And what he's doing to state employees, particularly with this mandated vaccine, is nonsensical. It's unscientific. It needs to end. The moment it became common knowledge that people who are vaccinated as well as people who are unvaccinated can transmit the virus, then any mandate for vaccines should have gone out the window that instant. It doesn't even begin to make sense. The argument for mandated vaccines is that you can infect your neighbor. I don't think that's a very good argument. And many socialist regimes have used that threat of public health fear as a mechanism to take more and more power from its citizens. And that's what we're witnessing. Well, but even that is out the window now because it's not even true. The only person affected by the vaccine is the person taking it, and therefore it should be up to them.
You are defending people's religious rights, and especially in the wake of the vaccine mandate on state employees that you were just referencing. But under the governor's administration, unelected bureaucrats will be authorized to determine the legitimacy of religious claims, in direct conflict, by the way, Senator, with U.S. and state constitutional protections. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, right. They're stretching the power of the state government beyond the realm of its proper role. My Senate colleagues and I drafted a letter a few days ago to the governor calling him out on this, suggesting that, when you offer state employees an exemption based on religious grounds from the vaccine, you have to do it in accordance with our constitutional freedoms. We have a natural right to religious freedom, and my opinion is that people simply need to express that, and that's the end of the conversation. There is no more than just simply saying, I don't want the vaccine based on my religious beliefs, but the state government, under Ned Lamont's administration, is instead requiring employees to fill out a form indicating their previous vaccination status, and having to write a paragraph or two about their personal beliefs and why they feel they're entitled to a religious exemption. This is nonsense. It is pure, out-of-control craziness that we are going to leave it in the hands of some unelected bureaucrat to review these religious exemptions to determine whether an individual free citizen in this state has a right to their religious freedom or not, based on the opinion of some person hired by the administration. That needs to end today. I called them out on it last week, and I issued a release yesterday, still looking for an answer. And if there's any press listening, I can't beg you enough to ask him this question at his next press conference. We need to hold his feet to the fire on it.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I know there's a lot of press that do. In fact, because I hear a lot. These are former colleagues that I worked at different career stops that I've had, or people that I went to school with, and they text me, they message me, and in some ways they envy me because I have the freedoms to discuss things that they don't. The state has begun a program though where they can provide weekly COVID-19 testing, right, for unvaccinated students at school, but isn't this an effort to tee the government up for mandating COVID-19 vaccines for all students?
Yeah, that's my impression. That's what was part of my release a couple of days ago. It's going to end up having more positive tests, which clearly is going to lead to a reaction for those school administrations who are concerned about, expanding infections and so forth. And that's just going to open the door. It's going to create an excuse to vaccinate young children, which there's no point in. The science tells us that COVID, thankfully, spares younger people. I think nationally, the numbers in the couple hundred deaths under 18 in the entire country, a country of 300 plus million people, it's negligible, the percentage. And of course, as we said, every death a tragedy. But you can't even find information about these deaths, by the way, Gary. I tried in Connecticut. We supposedly have 5 deaths under the age of 20 in Connecticut from COVID-19 since the very beginning. But I cannot get any information about whether or not these were healthy children or there were comorbidities involved, et cetera. And even older people, 20 to 29, 11 deaths since the beginning. But they've demanded that everyone get a vaccine. It doesn't even make sense to tell a healthy 25-year-old to get a vaccine when the odds of their succumbing to the virus are virtually zero. In fact, I would argue that the vaccine injuries probably outweigh the potential damage from COVID and for people in that age range.
Yeah, I agree.
These mandates are insane. They are over the top. And they're un-American as well as unscientific and illogical.
Then what's the purpose? Then what is their reasoning behind? Is it about compliant? Is this a test for something greater to come a few years down the road?
Yeah, your guess is as good as mine. All I know is that this is the government acting in a way it is completely not supposed to in this country. In this country, the people are free. The government is responsible to us. They are our employees. We tell them what to do. And things have flipped, completely 180. The governor is acting as if he is a king. He is dictating to people, what they need to do. They are using the power and the force of government to scare people, number one, into compliance. And then they are trying to bully them into appropriate, compliance. You had people speaking out at a Cheshire school about the mask mandate.
Yeah, I remember.
And, the governor's reaction was to call them bullies and to try and intimidate them. And since then, that story has been re-reported 1,000 times, and every time making the moms that were there, who were completely polite and simply questioning their governor, into crazy people. There was one guy there who was kind of yelling at the governor on the way out because he shoved his wife, apparently, on the way out the door. But the police were on scene. The cop didn't even get out of the car. I mean, there was no violence there.
Right.
And yet you have governments across the country acting out. You've got the Attorney General of the United States, Merrick Garland, issuing a statement yesterday saying that he wants the FBI involved to investigate moms that come to Board of Ed meetings to challenge critical race theory as if they're domestic terrorists. And that's in line with the governor's response of calling people bullies and trying to intimidate these employees into getting the vaccine by making them jump through hoops. The government's out of control, and people need to take it back.
It's frightening. It's frightening and it's hard to believe that this is the United States that you and I, grew up in. I'm running out of time. I only have about a minute left or less than that now. When you spoke about all of these statistics on the Senate floor, how many hospital beds, what percentage of people, everything that you've just more or less covered very briefly here with me this morning, what was the reaction in the room?
Yeah, they ignore it. I think that the people listening, they either get it or they're going to try and dismiss it as if it doesn't exist. We heard Senator Looney and Senator Duff respond right after, and they tried to downplay the actual facts and statistics as if I was somehow making them up. But I was using the data straight from the state of Connecticut Department of Public Health, the governor's own administration, and I used responses that I received from them in writing to make my case. There's no arguing that the emergency is over, and we need to correct these people and hold them accountable.
All right. State Senator Rob Sampson, thank you for your precious time this morning. We got to have you back on sooner.
It's always my pleasure, Gary. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Anytime. It's always my pleasure. We're coming right back to Open Phone. Start dialing. Get